Happy day, my fellow terraformers. Our 40k Fallout terrain mashup continues by looking at the iconic vault door and how it was built. If you like what we're doing, throw us a like and a subscribe. Check out our channel for the rest of the videos in this series. There are quite a few Fallout vault door builds on YouTube. What most of them don't do, however, is the retraction of the door. That is to say, the door slides back then out of the way. I was pretty determined to animate that action in this build. There are two primary motions with the door, the dolly moving back and forth, and the door plunger moving back and forth. Here you can see the dolly being installed into its guide runners. Most of the electronics are contained on the dolly itself. This includes the limit switches, voltage booster, and the H-bridge that controls the motor's polarity. The dolly electronics hook up by way of connectors to the base of the gate room. This allows me to take things apart to perform maintenance, diagnose problems, and will allow me to paint the various assemblies separately. This wiring harness was too frail, so it ended up getting replaced later on. The dolly worked well with the rack and pinion actuator. However, I discovered early on that it needed extra weight on top of the gear that runs along the track. I used a wee cube of bolts to provide that weight directly onto the gear. It worked quite well and virtually eliminated any gear slippage. I needed to ensure the user saw the big honkin' gear that the vault door spins on. To this end, I built a circular frame for the vault door and added a rack gear at the bottom. The teeth from the gear on the door ensures that this door spins gracefully when the dolly retracts to its fully open position. Building this assembly was quite tedious and time consuming, as the spacing on the cogs was very important and I had never built this type of assembly before. I ended up building 3 versions before I got one that I was satisfied with. I have newfound respect for mechanical engineers and the precision they work with when building systems. The vault door itself still needs a lot more detail, but at this stage I am simply ensuring the mechanisms all work okay. The center spindle is where all the work happens with the door. It's a 3-inch bolt mounted to a bearing by way of epoxy glue. This allowed the door to rotate when it catches on the cogs on the floor. Additionally, the bolt was hollowed out and a bamboo skewer was inserted to lengthen the axle. Several mounting holes were drilled into the bamboo to support the push rods and connection assemblies. They are all secured via cotter pins. By using several bearings and push rods, the door, or plunger, is moved forward and back by way of the blue servo motor. Once the door motors and mechanisms were built and known to be working, I built a couple custom cowlings for the dolly that hides most of the internal gubbins. Door screen was used so that the viewer can see all the mechanics running, but will allow me to obfuscate anything that does not look to scale. The cowlings are made from cardstock 5mm stir sticks, door screen, and toothpicks for mounting lock pins. Once all painted up, the motors will still be seen, but in a much more subtle fashion. The platform for the door itself is the first piece of GW bits used in the model. Using railings and platforms from the Zone Mortalis sets created a respectable looking deck and railing structure. This assembly needs to allow the door to move freely, but still allow models to move about the gate room when the door is completely opened. More bits and electronics will be added later to create the door console, elevator, and other gate room accoutrements. Given how important and iconic the vault door is in Fallout lore, the outer facade of the gate door needed to really look good. Using multiple layers of cardstock in a bas-relief fashion allowed me to create a decent look for the outside of the vault. As mentioned, the door itself will have more detail added later for the pièce de résistance. The lore of the piece dictates that this vault has been buried for 40,000 years. Therefore, there will be no functioning electronics on the outside of the door. Eventually, the door assembly will be powered via the 9-volt battery array installed in the mountain. For testing and sub-assembly creation, the Arduino is powered from my PC, and the motors are powered via a power supply set to 5 volts. Here we see those connections being set up just prior to power up. With everything installed, we can now go through the door's power up and initial cycle. It takes a few seconds on power up for the door to realize where it is at and adjust accordingly. Here we can see the door open-close cycle from the front. Notice how the door plunger retracts before it starts to move to the open position. All in all, it's really starting to look good. Our last view for today is that of the door cycling from inside the gate room. Notice how the door moves over the railings and platforms smoothly without impeding the door's movement. Eventually, the door will have sound, lights, and some animated computer screens as consoles. But that is a topic for another day.
The Emperor wishes you a lovely day.